seen it.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt of the Marquardt Law Firm at marquardtlawfirm.com.
Welcome to Talk Law Radio. I'm Todd Marquardt here on 9:30 a.m. The Answer. Remember to check us out on YouTube and subscribe to the Talk Law Radio YouTube channel. Here with Barbara Lambert and Sharyl Mays, and we're all talking about the signs that a senior may need help. Before the break, we were talking about hoarding and that it could be a sign that there's something going on there. Barbara, what did you want the listeners to know about hoarding?
So, Todd, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not against the law to be a hoarder.
It's not against the law unless. Yeah, so the big problem that comes up is if it's a fire hazard, then you could be putting your whole neighborhood into jeopardy.
So a fire hazard, I met someone and he had newspapers piled all over, the mail piled all over, and he also had all those plastic containers that you get from H-E-B with cupcakes and donuts and things in them piled all over. Is that a fire hazard?
Well, it's a fire hazard if all of those things caught on fire. It would be a fire hazard probably, but it's really the matter of degree. Is it stacked up in the corner? Is it only a foot high, or is it like all the way to the ceiling? And could this person get out of their house if there were a fire?
So you mean, are you referring to maybe if they're hoarding so much that there's just a tunnel that's a pathway?
A tunnel or a mountain that they have to walk over.
Oh, that'd be really dangerous if they were.
Right. So one of the situations that I remember when there was a hoarding situation is you had called me, and one of the adult children of this older couple was trying to help their parents, but the parents wouldn't let them into the house.
Right.
And so that was a sign that maybe something wasn't going well. And so the child didn't know if they needed a guardian. And so guardianship wasn't appropriate. And she didn't have power of attorney, and so she couldn't use that and couldn't force them to do anything without a court order. And so that's when you had the idea of, well, if there's a hoarding situation, then maybe we could call the fire department and then at least get inside the house and see what's going on.
Yeah, also, I think in that particular case, they had numerous cats. And I think the cats was a good opener for us to call, because I think they had many cats beyond the city ordinance of how many cats you can have. And then it was, in fact, I think I recall that a plumber had gone into the house. They had a problem, and the plumber had gone into the house, and he was the one that alerted me to the fact about the cats.
Okay.
Because he had to put on a respirator because the smell from the cat feces was so, and urine was so strong. And that's how we were able to move ahead of that. But had that plumber not gone in there, we had some challenges.
And at that point, you have enough evidence to call Adult Protective Services.
Right.
Because you're not allowed to neglect yourself if you're putting other people at danger, especially.
Right.
You have any memories of people like that?
Unfortunately, the first one that comes to mind is we had an elderly lady that her paranoia had made her hoard to the point where she was living on her back porch, and she had had the water cut off because of a repair that needed to be made that she just kept forgetting to get taken care of. And it ended up that the neighbors called because they saw her sleeping in a lawn chair on the back porch, and APS had to be called in and take her removed from the situation.
Well, that's really obvious. That's a big sign. Are there some other signs that we haven't got to yet that are not as obvious?
I think I kind of jumped around and caught, unable to manage their finances. I remember I had somebody who It was a mother that was living, elderly woman who was taking care of her son who had a diagnosis, I think it was, of Down syndrome. And they were living alone, and they had their routine of every day. They would go on the bus and, get groceries, go to Walmart, something like that, and come home. And one day in particular, the woman, the mother, and her son were all dressed up, sitting all dressed up, waiting for someone. And the neighbor had come over, and she said, "What are you all dressed up for today?" I mean, the son had on a suit, and she had on a new dress, and she said, "Well, we're getting married today." And she said, "To who?" And she said, "Well, this man's been calling me and asking me to send him money, and I've been sending him money, and he's coming this afternoon to pick us up, and we're going to move out of here and get married." And the neighbor thought, "Oh, no, this is..." And so she had called me, and we had called Adult Protective Services. Not sure if we got you involved at that point, but it was a very sad story because the mom had a nervous breakdown when she realized what happened at an elderly age. And so from there, Adult Protective Services, the mom was no longer to care for her disabled son, so we had to move them to a retirement community where they could both live safely and be protected from that exploitation. But it was a very sad case because on the outside, it all looked good. It looked like everyday normalness was going on, but here she was sending loads of money to this exploiter.
Right. Exploitation is a sign. And so if you find out that your parents are contributing to the Jamaican lottery, or that a Nigerian prince is discovered that they're part of the royalty, then you probably need to get involved.
Or if there's a new frequent visitor that's coming all the time. Someone that's coming to visit that's never been in the picture before, and what is their interest? Why are they coming and spending all this time with your mom or your dad? And, Dad bounced a check. That's unusual. How could he bounce a check? And then through further investigation, that's why these powers of attorney are so important, because at that point, it could be difficult to get it.
And so we see some people that like to plan ahead. They'll get all the legal documents in order, and there's some people when it's an emergency, and we have to try and get that money back from those exploiters and file lawsuits. And of course that's a big challenge because now you're spending money to go after money that's already gone.
Right.
And so it's
long gone.
always better to do things in advance. And you can decide, you can put more instructions into your planning. I call it the take care of clause, how I want to be taken care of if I'm disabled or elderly. Then you can say, like my grandmother did, I never want to go to a nursing home. She was turning 65 right about the time that 2020 and 60 Minutes were airing episodes about all the horrors of nursing homes.
Right.
And she had friends that had gone to the nursing home, and she didn't like that. So my mom took care of her at home. But then my mom's take care of clause was, I don't want you to take care of me. I want to go to the nursing home because I don't want you to have to see me that way. She was more concerned about her dignity.
Right, and I think we forget about the dignity. We focus on care. You may come in and, mom or dad needs your help, and you just dig right in and you help them, and sometimes it's with some very personal type of care that they need help, and we have to remember about their dignity. Would you want your son or daughter doing some of those care needs for you? And to just, the approach is so different, to try to keep respect and dignity for someone when you have to help them with their personal care. So it's not a easy jump-in fix at all, and especially if we have an unskilled or untrained person doing it. And as a family member, I remember when my dad would visit, when he would repeat himself again and again, and I would just snap and, shout because I was answering the same question over and over and over again. And if I was caring for your dad, I probably never would have done that.
Right.
And why do we feel as the daughter or the son that we have the right to treat our parents that way? I mean, we just snap. I just snapped. And, he had some dementia, so I'm hoping he didn't remember that
You have
later on. But I felt bad after that. I felt really bad.
Yeah. So what are some of the things that that you analyze or research when you're evaluating between the caregivers that you might recommend or the homes that you might recommend?
So I realize that very few people want to leave home. They want to stay home and they want to live there through the end of life. But for very few people, that's possible. Very few people, that's possible. So we look, can we keep this person home? Can we keep them safe? And is it affordable? And is that the desire? And if it is, then we go down that route with a plan B of if we can no longer keep you safe at home, or if it's no longer affordable, what do we do next? What is the financial ability to pay for care? Because in-home care, you can run through a lot of money quicker than living in a retirement community because the cost of in-home care is pretty expensive.
It's one-on-one care, whereas in a care home that's several to one.
Yeah, shifts. So then we look at the socialization of the person, the needs of the person. If they're very social and can advocate for themselves, if they're sort of independent but they need help with their personal care, and assisted living is a good option for them because there's lots of activities, socialization, meals are provided there, and that personal care is delivered to them in the privacy of their own apartment. But if they're not social and they need it more, higher, consistent, hands-on, one-on-one care, then a care home is a very good option for that person. Often more affordable, and it's more one-on-one care. And then, of course, if they need a memory care, if they need to be kept busy all day and safe and in a secured environment, then a memory care is a good option for somebody with Alzheimer's or dementia. But if they're through that stage of being mobile, they're through that stage of needing to be kept busy all day, and they need more higher one-on-one care, then we look at the care home for that person as well. We look at the finances. What can a person afford? If there's funding out there available. And then we also look at the desired geographic location. Is this going to be convenient to those that want to visit and advocate for this person? So lots of things to take into consideration.
Yeah. So before we end the show, I wanted to ask you, Sharyl, because we focus on wills and the idea behind a will is leaving a legacy. Can you talk about some value that you've learned from somebody that went before you, or some value that you want to pass on to your children?
Ooh, that's a good question. I would say kindness to others, just to love how Christ wants us to love.
Amen. Well, thank you for saying that. Keep it short and sweet. Okay, well, you've heard it here on Talk Law Radio, the signs that a senior may need help. And because we're close to the holidays, Thanksgiving's just around the corner, you might keep some of these tools, tips, and tricks in your hat and try and find out, like Columbo, how everyone's doing while you're visiting for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Barbara, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Todd.
Okay, so tune in next week for another episode of Talk Law Radio. Stay tuned.
This has been Talk Law Radio with attorney Todd Marquardt, brought to you by the Marquardt Law Firm. You can learn more at marquardtlawfirm.com. And be sure to listen to the full Talk Law Radio show Saturday mornings at 11 on 9:30 a.m. The Answer.
Attorney Todd Marquardt talks about the law. His mission with the Talk Law Radio show and podcast is to help you discover your legal issue blind spots. In the beginning, God had one law. Don't eat from the fruit of that tree. Then came the 10 Commandments. Now we have federal, state, and municipal lawmakers that won't stop creating new laws. Laws that might impact you without you knowing it. Listen to the show and drop a line on Facebook or email host@talklawradio.com and let the host know what you think of the show, the topics you want to hear, and whether you want to be a guest.